Hey there, this is Joe Simonds, like diamonds. Welcome to episode number 1 of the Joe Simonds Show, sponsored by Fishing for Happiness, the new book that just came out recently. Here is the deal. If you're wondering, all right, what is Joe up to now? What is episode 1 of the Joe Simonds Show? Well, if you're not familiar with the background of this book that I recently published, this is really 6 years in the making. Around 6 years ago, I was living in Houston with my wife, Lauren. We just had a beautiful baby girl, and I was traveling a lot, owned my own business at the time, and you know what, I just kept waking up not fulfilled. And when I tell people that I wasn't happy, I don't want to come off like I was depressed or suicidal, because that wasn't true. But at the same point, I wasn't fulfilled, which could be just as dangerous and going through life like it's just Groundhog's Day. And that's what I felt like I was doing. I felt empty inside, and I was doing things like, drinking way too much and buying all kinds of toys and gadgets thinking that I would get me happier. And it did, temporarily. I remember buying my brand new Tahoe out there, and I felt great for like 2 weeks. And then it got kind of old, and I was right back to where I was. But long story short, I just wasn't feeling very fulfilled, like I had much of a purpose in my life. And so I decided to make a change. And the reason that the headline or the title of this, why a botched iPad gift changed my life, it truly did. I remember exactly where I was. I was down in the bottom floor where I worked in Houston. And I had a text from my wife, and this was like a really just low point in my life where I was like, man, I hardly have any friends. We're in a new city. It was when you have a baby too, and your wife is working crazy hours because she was in residency. I mean, I did nothing except work like crazy, hardly had a relationship with my wife, had a little bit of a relationship with my daughter, but I was working so crazy I didn't have much there either. And my wife sent me a text, and she says, my mom wants to know what you want for Christmas. Well, it happened to be the same year that the iPad was coming out, and yours truly wanted one. Even though I probably could have afforded one myself, I wanted one. It was a cool gift, and it's something I wanted. And so I wrote back to her, I want the new iPad. So have your mom give me gift card or whatever it is to Apple so I can get one. And so she did. But that night, I had just kind of like a change of heart. And someone had recently told me about this guy named Dan Kennedy. And I'll tell you why his name is important here in a second. And I decided to buy a Dan Kennedy book. And so I read the very first one. It was not this one. It was, I think, the Ultimate Sales Letter, one of the short ones, because I wasn't a big reader at the time. And I kind of got hooked. I was like, man, this guy has really got it. He's got a lot of life lessons. It's kind of a self-help book in terms of life lessons, but they're also very structured in teaching you one kind of big thing, which I'm going to talk about here on this episode number 1. And so I changed my mind and texted my wife back. She was still working late that night. And I said, I changed my mind. I want Amazon gift cards. I'm going to buy books. So I actually gave up getting a brand new iPad, this one I got years later, and instead got about $500 total of gift cards for Amazon. And what I did was I invested in books, and I actually got around 20-something books. I believe it might have been 30 at the time. I don't remember the exact number, but I bought every Dan Kennedy book I could get, and this was one of them. And I just started going through them. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do one a week. I can do that. I was traveling a lot, so I could read a lot on airplanes and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to go through one book a week. And here is my big tip for this week. And every week, I'm going to have one big tip. I'm either going to review a book, or I am going to have a guest on. I'm going to try to give you one actionable item every single week. And this week, it's how to read a book and how to take action on them. A lot of people get through a book, including mine. You could very easily go through this book, get all kinds of great knowledge, and then put it down and be like, man, what am I supposed to do now? I remember half of it because it took me a week or a month or 3 months to read. Here is my best tip ever on how to take action on every book. I put a goal that with every book I read, I would take action on one thing. That's it, just one big thing. What's the one big idea you got out of it? And here's how I do it. If you can see here, I have the little dog ears on a lot of these pages. Hopefully you can see that in there. Those are all little dog ears. And at the bottom, And that means it's important. At the bottom, you also see some as well. Hopefully you can see that in there. At the bottom, those are man, these could be really big ideas that could potentially even change my life. Like that one is one right there you can see. There's another one right here. And what I do after I get done with the book is I go through those bottom ones. This one happens to have 1, 2, 3, 4. That has 4 of those bottom dog ears. And I pick the one that I'm going to take action on. And I do it, which is also part of what you have to do to succeed. And guess what? When I started going through a book a week and doing this and actually taking action just on one thing, just learning one thing and doing it, my life got better. And in this case, I don't even know what this book is, The Ultimate No Holds Barred Kick Butt Take Prisoners, Tough and Spirited Guide for Business Success. So this was more on business stuff. Here's another one, Finding a Job You Can Love. A great book. You can see I did the same thing there. Hopefully you can see the dog ears on both the bottom and also the top. And I go through and pick just one big thing I'm gonna do, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. I think you can kind of still pull it off on a Kindle. It's a little bit tougher, but I highly recommend getting real copies so you can have these and go back to them as well. A lot of times I'll go back and I can get the highlights out of these books just by going to these. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm looking here at my clock. I'm getting closer to the 7-minute mark, and I did promise that every one of these episodes will be 7 minutes or less. And that's really the big goal of all of these, is for me to give you one big action item that I learned from a book. Many times I'll just do a book review because that is how this book started. It was actually going to be just like Joe's notes instead of Cliff Notes. I was going to go through and actually just kind of give the Cliff Notes or the Joe's Notes on every one of these 300 books that I've read. So here's my promise to you. One big action item, Monday through Thursday. Oh, there goes the beeper. Monday through Thursday, 7 minutes or less. Peace, I'm out of here. Joe Simonds like diamonds.